There's so much more goodness behind your dad.
Arratsaldeon, ongi etorriak Donostia Zinemaldira. Berri dugu Intruders filma, sail ofizialeko inaugurazioa, eta prentsaurrekoari hasiko diogu.
This film is Intruders of the inaugural session of the 59th San Sebastian International Film Festival. Welcome to the San Sebastian Film Festival. This is the press conference for the film Intruders. We have with us the director and the cast. We've got Juan Carlos Fernandillo, Clive Owen, Daniel Bruel, Pilar López Ayala, Carice Van Houten, Ella Purnell, and we also have the producers, Enrique López Lavigne and Mercedes Gamero. And they are prepared to listen to your first questions. First question, the person over there on the right, please, first question.
Morning. John Variety. Es una pregunta para...
It's a question for Juan Carlos Fernandillo in general. It seems to me that you belong to a generation of very young directors, like, for example, Stefan Lusivsky, Hofferson, Juan Antonio Bayona, Juan Pablo Sarantino as well, who have started to make films in English, films which have a certain level of budget, and also films with big studios, but not only for the studios. And it seems to me, and my question would be as follows, whether this is the line that you want to take, Bendito por Summit, your project, and also the project with Press Money Relativity. But whether this type of film is exemplified by the film that we've just seen, is the kind of film or the type of budget that you want to continue to make. Basically, there's one thing that, as a storyteller that I try to be, and I try to communicate this to the audience, and I share with all of you, there's something that I think is quite interesting when alternating very personal type films like Intruders with a project which is more industrial type film. And in that sense, this experience makes me alternate one with the other, take full advantage of the best things in the industry from films like this, as in the case of Intruders, who come from the bottom of my heart, and also to try to give a certain amount of personality to those more large entertainment type products. As a director, I consider a person who I still got a lot to learn, and I'm still growing in my work, and to work in both fields allows me to take full advantage of both places, so to speak. Obviously, Intruders is a film which starts from a characteristic or a feature which I firmly believe in, is to try to make films and projects in which express to a certain extent feelings and things that I've lived through sometime during my life, for example. And this is one of my type of films, okay? One of mine, so to speak. Hi, good afternoon. Conchita Pozanovas from National Radio. I would like to ask Clive Owen and Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. Juan Carlos, I would ask you, the script is not yours in this case. The film, as you said, is quite a personal type film. You took full advantage of leaving to one side some of your childish nightmares, perhaps, and perhaps the dream is to opening up, to inaugurate the San Sebastian Film Festival. It's not a nightmare, it's a dream. And for Clive Owen, I would like to ask you, you've worked in a short period of time with Fresnadillo and Juan Antonio Bayona. What type of energy do you find in our young directors here in Spain? This could be extended also, the question, to Daniel Bruel.
I chose this project like I choose every project, really. I read the script and really loved it. And then I saw Juan Carlos's films and was just super impressed. I think he's a huge talent. I loved 28 Weeks Later. I thought it was a really fantastically made film. I loved Intacto, and coming into a film like this, which I thought was a very original take. I wouldn't really call this a horror film. It's sort of much deeper and more psychological than that, and all the fear and trepidation and danger in the movie is within the characters. So it's a pleasure to act in and be involved in something like this. And I just think that this man's a huge talent. So.
With regards to the question you asked, Conchita, whether it has allowed me to put on the screen some of my childhood fears, that's true. There's something in the story that I feel deeply linked to, and that is, I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to tell me stories which are a bit dark, noir, about my family, certain family secrets that were a bit made me quite afraid, and it made me think about where our family came from. Those stories and those dark stories that she told me brought about certain nightmares. They took the shape of certain nightmares with this secret. I can't reveal the secret because otherwise my mother would kill me if I revealed the secret of my family. But it interested me quite a lot, and what interested me quite a lot, the idea of how our parents transmit fear to their children, how the ghosts that we create when we're children have a lot to do with our family, and upon the ghosts and the fears that our parents have felt at the same time. The fear as an inheritance, for example, the fear of our transmitted by our family is quite exciting, an area to explore and because it takes me back to a place that I feel comfortable in, that to find that human factor in any supernatural story. Something that's supernatural is an extreme response to problems that stem from the human condition, and I feel comfortable there because it also makes me feel identified with these types of approaches in these types of film. So therefore, this links quite directly with these feelings, how the human factor participates in these supernatural stories, so to speak. And the following question about the festival, inaugurating the festival, film festival, I feel very, very excited, deeply excited, and privileged to be inaugurating this new edition of the film festival, especially inaugurating it with this film. It's also a great responsibility, obviously, because people who I respect and admire are here, and they're all going to go and share and see the film. But after working for 3 years on this film, I think it's the best place possible to start up and to inaugurate it in this festival in our country. I respect quite deeply everything that takes place in the film festival, so it's very exciting for me. Hi, Juan Carlos, and to all the cast and the producers, congratulations for the work. We've just recently seen the film. You were talking about this just a moment ago, in the generation, what's transmitted from generation to generation. The script, or the creation of the script, how is that linked to Jodorowsky of psychoanalogy? I'm glad you've talked about mentioned Alejandro Jodorowsky, who is a global artist who I've known for many years, and I agree with his theories completely, because to summarize, the family is the place in which the creation of practically all of the emotional structure of human beings. When we talk about fear, obviously, fear is also connected with our family, or linked to our family, and the inheritance of certain family ghosts is transmitted to the next generation to a certain extent. So therefore, Alejandro is Jodorowsky. I've always followed his work, and I think he's a guy who, through an artistic proposal, which is what he does, to go further in depth into what mankind is about, and to propose an art which he believes in, art as a healing process. He always believes, he doesn't believe art unless it's a healing process. In this film, there's a bit of this as well. There's a trip between there's a journey through a story which is really, there's a lot of suspense, but the feeling is that you have to confront your dark side, the dark side sometime in your life to avoid those ghosts that have been pursuing you throughout your whole existence, continue to be with you, and that can be stop them from being transmitted to your children. The emotional resolution, shall we say, of the film has to do with this. There's a moment where you have to confront the truth, and the truth can be painful, but at least it helps you to clean and heal all of the dark side that you may have been dragging along for so many years. Thank you. Juan Carlos, congratulations. Above all, I think it's very interesting what you say in the press book about the shadow and the model. Could you talk about this, about the shade and the model? Can you talk about the plastic and aesthetic selection involved in this work, and it talks about the nature of cinema, like the play between shadow and light. Yes, the premise, the artistic premise of the film was to conceive it as a fable. And it seems that in any fable or any story of this nature, the use of shadow is very important. In fact, the lighting and the aesthetic side of the film works very subtly, I would say, that fable type approach. And the director of photography, we used to sit down and we used to talk about the fact that the shadow in the film has to be treated in a very special way. There have to be shadows which have to bring about a more fantastic or much closer to what a fable is about. The film is always playing with two tones between realism and fantasy, and which to a certain extent that fantasy invades reality. So therefore, that's why I thought it was interesting to make a mixture of both colors, so that the eruption of what is fantastic in the story would have that power of being real, that something that was tangible, that you could really feel, especially as regards to drive the threat of the apparitions in both places, in England as well as in Spain, throughout the film.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hi, good afternoon. Fernanda Solosa, I'm from Mexico. Letras Libres is my magazine. I want to congratulate. It's quite risky, your film. I want to congratulate you nevertheless, because you play with the expectations of the audience, and it also seems as if you're playing tricks as regards to the perspectives of what can and cannot be done. And all of this falls into place at the end, needless to say. And my question has to do with what has just been asked to you about memory, family, fear as a common inheritance. And we in Mexico, from Mexico, artificially, we've created the perception that in Spain, a lot of movies are made in Spain that address the horror genre and psychological thrillers with kids involved. Many elements that you have managed, for example, in your film. And I would like to know whether you could extend this not only to a generation, but also to the country itself. That is to say, to think about the El Espíritu de la Colmena, for example, and the history of a country creates, so to say, these ghosts that form part of the history of that country and how they can transmit it, and whether all of these ghosts are emerging now. I'm not too sure whether you feel part of all of this inheritance. Obviously, I'm Spanish, and as a Spaniard, I would say, unconsciously, I reflect the reality of my country. And obviously, a story that goes through as a secret, which has been hidden for many, many years, ends up taking the shape of a monster which is attacking new generations. And the truth is, I've addressed from that point of view, it does resonate with our social political reality in our country. Undoubtedly, as a Spaniard, you end up, you're transmitting the place where you've been brought up. And there was where we talk about, and we feel that I'm inheriting a trauma that we may have in our country. But basically in this story, the intention wasn't social political. I wanted to become much more personal. That has to do with a certain place a place which I like, which is the family, and the family becomes the first core, the initial core, where you truly feel that certain horrors are connected to the secrets of your family in the past. I think that one addresses fear. One of the things that makes me more afraid is to discover the dark side of my loved ones. When you love someone, for example, to see their dark side is something horrible. It brings about anguish. It makes you feel horrible. But I think that we have to confront. To love someone completely is that you have to accept the dark side of that person, and this is the journey that is at the end of the story that I wanted to go through, and I wanted to show and to share in this film with you. And when you were talking about at the beginning of your question of the possibility of the film when it starts up and you don't know exactly what's going on and almost till the end, I think conceptually this story demanded this for a simple reason that it's a film that more being a horror film, it addresses fear. And when a person thinks about fear, fear has a multitude of interpretations. For example, if you're alone at home and you hear a weird noise, your head takes off and you start to think about a multitude of possibilities. I think that's what fear is about. I think that is the essence of fear, when everything is possible, when everything may happen or can happen. And I think that precisely in Intruders, in the first part of the film, everything is possible, where a lot of questions are being asked of you and you're drawing conclusions about a plot which is feeding slowly but surely and developing the origin of the fear that this family is going through. I would like to ask a couple of questions, two to the director and another one to Clive Owen. You've said that it is an inheritance, the message which is don't tell stories poorly to children. Is that what you're trying to say? And why the resolution of those fears is developed, it comes at the end of the film in London. And I would like to ask Clive Owen, it's the second time that you've come to San Sebastian, and always with things which are out of the normal subject matter. I remember, do they always fit you into these types of characters which are always out of the normal, so to speak?
It must be related to the stuff that I'm attracted to. I was last here with Alfonso Cuarón and Children of Men, which I think, similar to this, was a very, hugely ambitious film, made by a really great, talented director. I think that when I read the script of this and I talked to Juan Carlos about his vision for the film, I saw his ambition. I thought it was a very ambitious thing to tie in all these elements together and bring them in to pack an emotional weight, and I was hugely excited by the possibility of him achieving that, and I think that's what he's done.
As regards to what you were saying, basically it has to do with story and how you tell stories to your kids, and also what are you hiding from your kids when you tell them a story. Sometimes you hide certain things, and these may create ghosts and monsters much worse than what if you told them the whole story. So therefore, I think overprotection in this case and hiding things ends up generating a horrible ghost or a monster which will be transmitted from one generation to the next. Why is it resolved in London? I think that the idea of two different cities linked to something which I thought was quite interesting, precisely to transmitting the ghost. Let's say the truth is, when there's something which is that as powerful as this ghost or monster created in this place, he ends up pursuing wherever you may go. It pursues you no matter where you go, where you end up. All of the dark side of you is going to be in that monster. It follows you. It's going to follow you all the way to the end, and sooner or later you're going to have to confront him. So therefore, obviously, the resolution of the monster that starts in Spain and ends up in England demonstrates the journey that the main character confronts throughout the film, and sooner or later he's going to have to relieve it or resolve it, albeit he's far away from the origin, which was Spain originally, undoubtedly.
Yes, encantado.
Hi, good morning. Congratulations for the film, which contributes a lot, I believe, because those fears that I've seen that you're talking about, that other dark side of the family that brings about a lot of terror. To film it, and the editing that you've done, I think has been very good. I think it was probably difficult, all the editing work, so it's a little work of art, the truth is. But I would like to ask you, there's a moment in the film that reminded me of The Exorcist, but in a demythifying sort of way. And that is to say, when he says, well, these guys are nuts, this family's nuts. I thought it was great the way you did that. You made it less dramatic. Thank you very much. Thank you, says the director. Obviously, you're talking about a classic. I'm not saying horror film, but a classic in films, The Exorcist, because it addressed something, as I said before, that I agree with. That is to say, there's something deeply human in each supernatural story. And I confess, it's a film when I was a kid I saw quite a lot of times, but nowadays I can't see it that easily. The psychological drama that is involved, it's so enormous, it's so horrible, that I confess that it misconcerts me, and I don't like to see it too much, because I go through a hard time when I watch it. And logically there's a reference and the influence that any director may feel when we talk about something that perturbs you or misconcerts you or makes you afraid. The possibility of using an exorcist in it is obviously the great ghost of the film, The Exorcist, emerges. What can I say that has not already been told? What can I tell that has not already been told in the previous film, in The Exorcist? And obviously it's much more humane and more powerful to address The Exorcist as something that relaxes the film, that calms it down, that doesn't believe in what's going on, and gives a theory from his human side. He said basically nothing's going on here, simply what's going on, that these two, the mother and the son, are nuts. So therefore, from that point of view, to address from another place, from another position or perspective, linked to the story, a liturgy almost, and an alternative to resolving these problems with a greater personality and in a more unique manner. So therefore, I think it was basic to address this alternative of using religion as well as the alternative of using psychiatrists in the film, and to see how both options end up failing, basically because the problem transcends conventions and it is connected to what is human, what is deeply human. So therefore, only from the human side of things, we can eradicate and save the threat of what's going on in the house and to the family. Hi, good afternoon. 2 questions for Fresnadillo. Juan Carlos, first of all, from your short film Esposados, can you give us an idea, tell us how your career has gone? I think it's been meteoric, really, the truth be said, from your short. In the credits at the end, in the acknowledgements to the Terror Week Film Festival and the Sitges Film Festival, as well as the people in charge, José Luis Rebordinos and Ángel Sala. I would like you to address that issue, if you could. Well, as regards to my career, and as I was saying, and how it's developed, I like to, obviously, to tell stories that can achieve the greatest amount of audience possible. There are many people watching it. So a film that's personal like this, we were involved in writing it. It was very difficult to turn it into something that was accessible, something that could communicate something to the great majority of the audience. And I fervently believe that any film, whether it's special or less, has to be deeply entertaining, and it has to capture the attention of the audience, to whom I obviously owe all my respect. So therefore, if we think about my career, I would say that I'm interested in stories, as I said before, where the human side tries to fight against the divine, the supernatural, so to speak, is present in each of them, but with a type of a ghost which has to do with something that's not working on the human side of things. That connection between the human factor and the fantastic elements is something that I feel comfortable in, and I believe that I'm going to continue to develop. I think it's a field that I quite naturally recur to and return to time and time again. And Sitges and the other film festival, these references that I made in the credits, these have been very important in my career, where I've discovered great jewels of cinematography, which are fantastic films. And I want to thank the people in charge of these festivals, to thank them, because to a certain extent they participated in the construction of this film. Hi again. Juan Carlos, Roque Baños, choosing him as a composer of the film, we're going to continue to work with him, and he surprises me more and more because he's quite prolific. Roque is the great discovery of this film, the composer, because what Roque had to do was not easy. He had to play with, from the music he had to deal with and mix and combine what is disconcerting and what is emotional at the same time. So therefore the truth is, it's difficult and takes time to adjust to these two different colors, which end up merging and fusing together, which is what happens in the film. So therefore his work has been quite complex and quite intensive, but he's got the talent and the availability to work so quickly and directly that it has enabled us to be relatively easy to find solutions. His experience and his work and career obviously back him up to address proposals which a priori are so complex, like in the case of Intruders. He's demonstrated that he's able to address it and manifest quite directly and clearly the emotions and what is disconcerting in the film. I'd love to work with him because I think he's a guy that understands perfectly the language of cinema, and I think he's one of the greatest guys to work with at this level. Hi, Javier Garcia. For Juan Carlos, a question for you. It's a luxury to have this film as an inauguration, and as you addressed The Exorcist, have you been able to correct things, or you've just said, have you corrected the actors when they worked, or did you just allow them to do what they want to do? And what's it been to work with them, with all of them? Well, first of all, I've got the feeling that you don't have to tell great actors anything if they're there, because there's something in the script that has attracted them. And Hector, for example, understood quite well the humor side of his character, and the fact that an exorcist was associated in the moment, it almost makes the film relax. I think he did it in a very clear way with a lot of talent, which he obviously has, and I feel very proud that he's accepted such a small role, like a cameo, but very important. His appearance in the film is crucial because it breaks the film and it takes it down another line, and therefore I'm very glad that he accepted that small role, albeit it was very, very short. Yes, there was a question in the center there, I think. Yes, back there.
Hi, Damon White, magazine. Can we hear from the cast, please? I'd love to know your thoughts on the movie and what appealed to you about this particular project.
Básicamente, te contesto, o sea, contesto en español, ¿no? Creo yo, ¿no? Sí, más cómodo.
Hay traducción al español, ¿no?
Basically, this is a film that from the outset, it's a journey from one place to what is emotional. The only way to be able to transmit this transition that takes place in the film is to be very close to the cast and the actors, to be very close to them, almost stuck to them. That's why I took the decision of not being too involved with the script, because it allowed me to take a certain step back so that when we had the script in our hands, I could mold things and adjust things with the actors and to change it with complete freedom, the dramatic proposal of the script. In that sense, it was quite clear that it was a story that, at the end of the day, had to be communicated and transmitted through the actors. They were going to put the emotions into the end, the whole journey of the film to that emotional revelation at the end. So undoubtedly I needed a cast which I felt comfortable with, and a cast who felt like working from the human side of things. The final cast has to do with this, that is to say, it has to do with the development and providing more potential to the human factor than to the misconcerting or the supernatural side of things. The idea of Clive, of inviting Clive for this film, has to do with giving someone who's had a very solid actor, and with the immediate empathy that he has with the audience, so that he could tell his dark side, about his dark side, which is very interesting to see that he's a kind of always, that exemplary father who's a hero finds himself in an extreme situation and he has to confront it when he discovers that it has to do with him at the end of the day. There's something that he's been dragging along for many years. So therefore, I think that the acting power that Clive has throughout the film and the films that he's made allowed us to follow it all the way through to the end. Someone who's so powerful, a character like him, so that grabs you from the beginning of the film and takes you all the way to the end without any type of questioning. For example, I've had the good fortune of having Carice, who is someone who contributes a special color to the story, because this is something that I was talking to, a certain intruderism, so to speak, to the film. She's intervening in the relationship between the father and the daughter, and she's like an intruder herself, and she collaborates also to create, to try to cut off that transmission between, because she's in a position that brings about a new dimension to the film. Well, with Ella, what can I say? Intense work, and she carried out a very decided approach to her acting work. A young person like her coming to the film, taking her to places which are very difficult and places to go to, but Ella very courageously and great decisively jumped into the deep end from the outset, and she facilitated things, made it easy for me, because quite curious, she's young, but she's so mature when she analyzes the story and the plot. And I would also highlight on the Spanish side, obviously, Pilar and Daniel, because they've portrayed quite clearly an element which is quite close to the Spanish culture, which is how visceral Pilar is through her character, as well as through the contention that Daniel has to carry out. And I think this makes me, it's close to me as a Spaniard. There's a paradox between what's visceral and what has to be contained, a contained sort of acting. And the work between both of them has followed that direction and has made the film have that weight in the past, which is that important and that radically crucial for the entire story. In this aspect, I would like to ask Pilar López de Ayala for getting involved into this genre of film. What has surprised you? What's novel in this experience for you? And well, for me, it's not a question of genres. It's more of forming part of a good story. I felt, and I like sci-fi a lot, science fiction, and the fantastic component that this film has, and I felt like forming part of it. When I was told, I thought it was a joke. I couldn't believe, and it had been a long time since I'd followed Juan Carlos's career and his films, and I'm a fan of his previous films, and when they told me that they wanted me to form part of the project and surrounded with such a great cast and great actors, I couldn't believe it, the truth be said. After that, I discovered that my character was very powerful in it, and I felt like there were a lot of nuances and a lot of colors in my character, and it gave me the opportunity of doing things that very few times occur to you, which is great for actors, is to a scene goes under another scene, and when it's a very complex character, which is the character that I portray, which is great. So the truth is, I'm very thankful of forming part of this story. So it's been a pleasure to shoot a film with a person who loves actors, who works with them in such a way that gives you the possibility of doing a sequence from different perspectives, not only physically but also from an emotional standpoint. So, and also, all the rest of the work is based upon the actors and what spontaneously occurs in the rehearsals and of the prior work. And this is a luxury, the truth be said, for an actor. And it has been very good. It's been a very positive experience.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hi, Jerónimo Martín from COPE 13 TV. I would like to congratulate Ella because she worked twice with Spanish directors in the last couple of years, one with Juan Carlos and another with Gustavo Herrón. And Vivir para Siempre, and your character was marvelous as well. It seems that you like Spanish directors, is that true? And I would like you to tell us about your experience with these two Spanish directors. What could you highlight about these directors, about them in these complex characters that you've had to portray? And Daniel Brühl, how did you prepare the priest? Because it's a special type of priest. He's different from your cliche type priest. I imagine that you prepared yourself quite deeply in order to do that.
Well, no, I love Spain. I love Spanish people. I think you're incredibly friendly and nice. So, meeting Spanish directors and working with them is a massive pleasure because it's enjoyable, and you have a laugh on set, you get to know people, and it's like a massive extended family. And I found that Gustavo and Juan Carlos are very, very different directors. Gustavo he's very relaxed on set. He's very approachable, and it's easy for you to talk to him. And he takes things in his own time, which may mean that you have to do extra days filming or less time tutoring and stuff. But I find that on Vivir para Siempre or Ways to Live Forever, it was very relaxed, very laid back. But because this is such an intense film, I think it was important to keep that kind of energy up. And Juan Carlos was great, and he definitely helped me with some of the intense scenes I had to do.
I was a bit afraid. For once, you've got to play once in your life. You've got to play a priest. What do you know? And I said, "How are we going to do this?" Well, there was a fantastic Jesuit guy that allowed me to visit him and his colleagues outside on the outskirts of Madrid, a very poor, lesser favoured area of Madrid, where they live and they work. And I met them, and there's also the cliche of a Jesuit priest, people that are very close and very serious, which I was always afraid to go and visit these people. But I noticed that these guys were people who believe, but that do something good. They have a social work that they truly want to help the poor people in these suburbs. And this is what my character does. I went to church. I slept with the Bible next to me, something that I normally don't do. The film is in two languages, Spanish and English. Is the distribution in a country like the US, how is it going to be, just the way it is, or dubbed, or what's it going to be? I think the producer of the film should talk about this. That the US, you can't dub films, so therefore they can't be dubbed, so therefore it'll be exactly the same in the same way you saw it today. And it will condition the distribution. That's quite logical, but we've also got an offer so far. It's quite progress. So the film will be seen in the US, basically. Patricia Samatrin from notecine.com. For you, all of the fears that you deal with, isn't the greatest one for kids to grow up, because Pilar, when she tells stories to her son in the film, maintains him in the world of fantasy and prevents the son from growing. And Ella, she's given a little teddy bear when she wants something else in her birthday. These parents, don't they do this to hide their secrets? They want their kids to continue to be kids and not grow up. Yes, I think the premise to the story, through fantasy, that is, and through the stories, you avoid your kids suffering reality. So therefore, that's the narrative premise of the story and the consequences this brings about. And basically, I think if you abuse this, or if you go you go too magical or fantastic with your kids, it ends up creating a nightmare. And that's basically what Intruders, my film, proposes. And we have to confront reality sooner or later, undoubtedly. So therefore, I think overprotection, which takes place in the film through these parents who are trying to protect their kids from this threat, has to do with this. Yes, it has to do, leaving reality, and this brings out a true inferno, or brings out an almost a living hell, as you could see in the film. Any further questions?
Galera gehiago, sí, ahí atrás, por favor.
It seems that there's one at the back. The director, Juan Carlos Fernandillo, is this a consolidation of an international career? Are you now going to continue to work along these lines, or are you going to do a more national type film? Or have you left that to one side, because it's been rumored that you want to go towards Hollywood and Spielberg might produce one of your films and so on and so forth? What future projects do you have? And whether you want to take them between what is the fantastic side of things, between what is human and what is divine. Well, as I was saying at the beginning, I think that I feel very comfortable in the fantasy genre, and I feel very comfortable addressing these types of stories. Obviously, my intention is not a marketplace issue. I wanted to find the best tools in order to tell the story I want to tell. So therefore, Intruders, it seemed to me, it was very important that we're a film. The Anglo-Saxon side was important, but also the Spanish side. I think Intruders, to a certain extent, summarizes my approach to the world of cinema, because you shouldn't give in to your origins or renounce your origin, where you're from, let us say, to make a film that can make it to a bigger audience because you're using another language. And in that sense, and as I was saying before, to be within the industry allows me also to give feasibility to very personal projects, such as is the film Intruders, which stems from an obsession of making a film which has to do with something which is much more personal, which comes closer to the way in which I can see or I feel the world myself. I'm a Spanish director, and that's what I work from, and that's where I make most of my work. That's from my culture and my country, so I can tell stories also in other languages. Why not? Okay, I would like to ask Carice, your character is probably the most ambiguous in the film. An enormous amount of acting, or made it very difficult. More than ambiguous, she's a bit mistaken, because on a certain occasion you may think she's a villain, in others you don't. Could you talk about the way you addressed your actor, and how you worked with Clive Owen? How you worked with him, because I consider him to be a very interesting and very good actor.
No translation, by the way. Really well done. Now, shit, I forgot your question. Just let me first of all say that I was very, very happy to work with everybody here. To work in Spain. I've never worked in Spain before. It was a huge pleasure. Juan Carlos is the first moment I met him. It was a very, very personal connection we had immediately. It was not like talking about movies. We were just immediately going deeper, and I really, really liked that. And I think that's what you feel in the film. It's so soulful, and it's so personal. Working with Clive was great. There was only one day where I didn't like him so much, and every other Spanish person was when Holland played the World Cup final against Spain. I was the only Dutch person in a group, and he chose the Spanish side. but the rest was great. He's so down to earth. He's really great to work with, and I'm very privileged. And also him. Sorry, but I have to say that in my trailer, a day after we lost, which was a horrible day, you can imagine. He put a poster of the Spanish team in my trailer to tease me. But it shows how close we were and how much fun we had as well on sets.
Okay, muchas
Answer your
gracias.
question?
Sí.
No.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Eskerrik asko.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Midnight